Hi, everyone. You are now tuning in to Conversations with Filmmakers podcast. We present our final discussion with our special guest, screenwriter and producer Doug Shaffer, whose recent project 5,000 Blankets was released by Sony and Affirm Originals. We hope you enjoyed part 2 of our discussion. Thank you for joining us today.
But it gets, as a producer, what's frustrating is that sometimes, though, if you lay off the gas, so to speak, there's like mistakes, or you'll find mistakes, and you're just like, oh,
we can't go back and film that. Yeah.
Well, no, or you just, you don't want to micromanage too much, but sometimes you have to realize that other people working on the movie are going to move on to their next project quickly, probably. And so you just got to make sure everybody's doing their job and you're getting everything you need. Because I've had it where, we've made a movie and then our post house, I was there to check on opening title credits, and then they misspelled something, and so after this was in the theater, I saw like the production designers made, and I'm like, and luckily it was only showing like a couple nights or whatever, and then I was like, you got to fix this, and then we had to fix it, so now it's streaming and everything. There's not the issue, but I found it. I was like, oh my god,
how did you guys do that?
Because I was kind of worried, because this vendor, they were doing good work, but I always had to constantly check up on them, because I say, okay, we're doing this, and then I had to keep double and triple checking their work, because, and I've had that with one of our sound guys one time on a lower budget movie.
Yeah, let us know, because that was going to be my next question.
Like I was really worried about this guy, because it was a low budget movie, and I was like, we're mixing. I'm like, okay, well, let's make sure this is okay. And so, however he mixed it, he didn't follow the specs, or he did something. So when it came up, when it showed on TV, the background noise was so loud. Like the background was just so loud, and the background music, and I was like, oh my god. And so I had to call the network. I'm like, don't ever air that again. We're gonna fix that, and then we got to recheck it for QC and then make sure it's okay. Because I was just so embarrassed that had happened. But that,
but that's extra budget though. Those are like it's not a major mistake. I mean, I've definitely been involved.
Well, it's just one of those things that you're just like, oof. People don't realize, like, a lot of the stuff, like I think at the Game of Thrones, there was a Starbucks.
Oh my gosh.
And that especially if you're rushing, people aren't seeing it. I actually thought when that happened, that was planted as kind of a thing where it would create social media buzz. But gosh. I don't know. But the fact that
it wasn't. I was at HBO at the time, and I remember I was in home entertainment, and I was there with the controversy as well, when they had a former president's head on a spike in Game of Thrones, and and I was like, whoever did that, it was somebody on crew just doing a prank, a joke, and was just like, whatever, you know what I mean? But not realizing like some eagle eye viewer was going to catch that, and it blew up bad. But yeah, the Starbucks.
I didn't know that one.
Oh yeah, it was. I'll say for the audience, because he's no longer president, but George Bush. And at the time, everybody despised him when he was in office. So, well, not everybody, but you know what I mean. And they put his head on a spike, like a bloody head. So it was like they showed the line of heads, of like, because Game of Thrones is all about killing people, right? So I think this was season 1, and they put the head on the spike, and the camera panned, and it was like George Bush's head. And I was like, y'all are crazy. Even the coffee cup one, and those are things that happen. Like when you see the boom mic, there's a lot of
that stuff you just don't catch, and especially if you're doing something, you got to finish it up quickly. So I guess my
moral of the story
message is just that type of stuff happens. You're not going to necessarily fix everything, but there's always stuff.
So let me ask you, now that we're on that subject line, tell us what about one of your worst projects you ever worked on, and why? You don't have to name names, of course, but just give us some insight into more challenging situations. And then, I'd love to know the best project, so like just let the audience really know. We like the insight for the audience, just to know, like, hey, the producers, like, like you said, post could be this, pre could be that, editing, like names off of credits, like
well,
challenging
the
talent and
most
how did you
challenging
overcome?
one was a bigger budget one we did for Lionsgate. And the issue wasn't that I necessarily didn't like it. It was that I was put in the middle because I was actually working for a production company, a gentleman who financed the movies. And so I had him and this other production company, which is the production company of a very famous person.
Hmm.
And they were fighting back and forth the whole time. And I was just caught in the middle of this, and it was just so uncomfortable. And it just, it just started to get really, really, really nasty. The issue with that was just that there was a lot of infighting, and it made it really uncomfortable. And that just kind of, uh, that kind of made its way to the crew, and there was a lot of division and stuff like that.
Hmm.
It wasn't a comfortable experience where I felt a lot of that stuff could have been avoided, quite frankly.
Hmm.
The best experience is probably the last movie I did, and that's because I was the only one producing it. So I felt like that was a lot more fun because I didn't have these outside factors,
And let us know about that
involved.
project. Like, let
Yeah.
us know about that project and everything. The last
Well,
one
this
that you
project I did with Sony is called 5,000 Blankets. It's about
did.
homelessness and mental illness, and it's actually
Hmm.
faith and family. Turned out really good. I worked on it for a long time, and we had to do that really, really quickly.
Hmm.
But and we had to shoot it right. We shot it right after Thanksgiving 2021, and it was in
Hmm.
theaters last Christmas.
And is it
And
streaming now or anything?
now
Like,
it's streaming. Yeah,
mhm.
it's kind of all the stream. It should be on Netflix here probably pretty soon. Um,
And what made that one so pivotal for you that
just because I felt like creatively and all that other stuff, it was like my baby. I felt like, I mean, my director did a great job,
mhm,
and I went to AFI with him, and he did a wonderful job. He's a perfect guy for it, and we had a great writer, I mean, Matt, who obviously, and he did a great
mhm.
job. So it
Matt
was very much
Antonelli,
like
we'll give
yeah,
Matt Antonelli a shout out so they
yeah, and
know the
Larry
audience.
Pastel, who co-wrote it with Matt, and it was based on this woman called Cindy Bunch. True story. I had been working with like Larry and Cindy for so long
Mhm,
on it. It was so good to see it finally on screen, and Matt and Amin did such a good job, and the people at Sony were great to work with. So
mhm.
it just was a great experience all around. It was great.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed that you had said was you were the only one producing it. So, do you feel like these productions sometimes that are way large budget with like 100 producers on it can be challenging for you? Are you saying like your avenue really is like, as long as we're gelling well?
Well, it depends
Yeah.
because it depends. It really depends on a budget because I mean, if you got a huge movie,
Hmm.
you're gonna as a producer, you're gonna need help because it's
Hmm.
just so much bigger on that scale. So you're gonna need, you're gonna have to be working with a few other producers to just
Hmm.
manage the workload.
Hmm.
Um, and there's some producers that are more kind of executive producers that kind of handle the communication with the studios or selling the movie. They're not really as involved in production. And then there's producers that are more involved with the production.
Hmm.
So it's just kind of having more defined roles, different skill sets there. But if you got bigger budgets, you're definitely gonna need help. I mean, the budget of our movie wasn't very big, so it was easier to manage. Now, if it was a
Hmm.
lot bigger, I would have probably brought somebody else in to
Exactly.
help me.
And now a word from one of our sponsors. After starting my podcast, I needed to hire the pros to market the content. Are you looking for digital success? Look no further. World Boss HQ is your strategic partner. Their experts turn your vision into a digital masterpiece. From stunning websites to powerful marketing, they've got you covered. Startups or established businesses, they are your one-stop solution. Visit worldbosshq.com. That is WORLDBOSSHQ.com and unleash your potential today. World Boss HQ Digital Marketing. Your online empire awaits. We are excited to bring you this world exclusive teaser from Bad Rabbit Pictures and Movie Pods. They are presented Age of Prophecy, a sci-fi fantasy podcast done in the style of the radio dramas of yesteryear. Coming soon to all streaming platforms. Visit www.moviepods.com or www.anoukchronicles.com for all the release dates. You won't want to miss this one. Your myths were born from our history. Let's check it out.
Life. A vile, messy sequence of events before we die. All designed for something beyond us. It has to be. Or else, what's the point? You don't know me, but I know you. I am responsible for your triumphs and miseries. I am Zira and Lilzor, and to truly understand your own story, you must know mine. Your myths were born from my history.
Hi there, and welcome back to Conversations with Filmmakers podcast.
And let me ask you to just like pivot real quick though, because we're, running a little bit low on time. We still have a couple of minutes left, definitely 10 minutes. So don't feel like I'm gonna hang up on you or anything.
No problem.
But I'm really excited because you're doing, this is excellent. All of this feedback for the audience though. So you mentioned the last film that you did was faith-based. Is that one of your favorite genres? And like, what other genres do you like to develop?
The inspirational faith and family. Yes, I've really enjoyed the last project because it had such a good message, and it was leaving, when you see how that affects the audience and how they connect with it, it's such a great feeling. So yes, I like the inspirational stage. I was doing a lot of kind of low budget thrillers, which are okay. I do like the horror genre. I'd like to try that, but right now it's I know those don't really mix faith and family with horror, but I've always liked horror movies. But yeah, I like doing the faith and family. It's
now, do you feel as a producer they try and keep you in one avenue, or do you feel like you're able to explore? Because I know that you also were doing like Lifetime movies and all of that stuff.
Well, look, I
do
think
they try and put you in that box per se, or do you feel like you have more flexibility than someone else? That's another filmmaker. Because a lot of times, for instance, actors and stuff, it took Jim Carrey a very long time to transition over from comedy into, more dramas and stuff. So
as a producer, I don't think it maybe with comedy, you would want a producer who's done comedy. But I think if you have the skill set, you have the story skill set and everything, I actually think it's better if you start off doing a lower budget project, because then you're kind of doing a lot of different stuff and a lot of different jobs. Because if somebody comes in, just say they come in, they're in like a studio role and they transition to a producer, they're more an executive, so they're more macro, like, treating the thing as, and utilizing your relationships more on, getting the movie made, getting the movie sold, which is invaluable, but they might not know the nuts and bolts as a producer. But I think it's important that you understand all the nuts and bolts, like what goes into pre-production, production, post, how to budget and schedule for those and stuff like that, because then you don't want to get in a situation, where, especially when you're starting a project off, that you're relying on a lot of other people to help you out, because you're going to have to try to, work with a writer or write something yourself. And then you're going to have to start packaging it somehow. And you're going to have to know how to budget and schedule some stuff. And it just helps if you know how to do that and you can speak to it. So when you're talking to executives, they're going to lean to you, because the thing is, people don't understand, like with executives, they're overseeing the projects and they want to make sure things are certain happen, but you're producing the movie for them. Like they might come to set and stuff, but you're doing the movie for them. And so they're looking for you to have answers and to solve problems for them. Like if they say, well, look, we're not going to have the budget for all this stuff, we need to do this, blah, blah, blah.
You
You
have to make
be
those
able to solve those problems.
Yeah, so you have to make those running changes and
Just
everything.
make it easy for them. That's the thing. If you make it easy for them, where you're not, I mean, there's always problems, there's always issues, but as long as, you're, because you got to understand, from the executives, they're probably juggling multiple projects, and their time is kind of limited, and they, you want to try to make them look good with a lot of this stuff.
I love that.
Now, an exciting message from our sponsors. When I decided to launch this podcast, I had the tools to find talent and market the show, but needed a skilled editor to bring it all to life. That's when I turned to Jacob Daly at redhawk.uk. His collaborative approach and swift revisions transformed my vision into reality. redhawk.uk, your one-stop solution for creative content services. Reach out to them. Now a word from another of our supporting sponsors, that is Realm IQ, a new AI consultancy started by film marketing veteran Kurt Doty, who has built an international team of AI mentors to help AI change management for your business. Go to www.curtdoty.co/Realm IQ. Smart people for smart adoption, creating smart worlds. Realm IQ. Book your AI workshop today. Adopt or perish. Hi there, and welcome back to Conversations with Filmmakers podcast.
All right, so let's get into two more questions for you really quick, because I do think that's pivotal. And what you mentioned was really important too, because I don't think a lot of people understand, as filmmakers, this is a business, right? Everybody just thinks it's like, you just go in there, we're having fun, we're throwing up a camera, but it's actually a business. And I also tell people, when they're walking out on those credits, right? All of those credits are people's name that was involved in the production. Every single name. So when you're in those mega movies like a Marvel film and it's damn 10, 15 minutes of credits, that's all the people that help support that, and you as a producer, it's something pivotal. You're at all stages of it. So being able to learn that craft is very important. What would you suggest, before we go on to the next question, someone do in order to become a producer, education wise, shadowing, mentoring, whatever? What would you say for yourself that actually helped you as you progressed into a profession?
Well, again, I was fortunate that I had the background I did, because when I came into it, some of the dynamics of like just kind of across the board with doing business with other people is totally applicable to the film business. They have you have vendors you work with, different people you work with, stuff like that. And so you understand kind of the business side, and you understand when you're meeting with these key decision makers, what they're thinking and what they're looking for. So that's where it was kind of good having that kind of business background. So as a producer, you'll find a lot of people that have a creative arts degree, but they have no business acumen. So it's all kind of new to them. They don't really understand how to kind of talk the talk, so to speak. But
Yeah.
as far so that's how the transition worked for me. As far as somebody kind of who wants to get into producing, there's a couple different ways. I mean, get on set, try to get on set, and you could, whether you're working for a producer or not, just being on set, understanding how it works with a PA or whatever, or if you're a coordinator or something, and then working under somebody and then kind of building up. I mean, you could have build up, then become like a line producer, and then you understand everything, and then you have that skill set, and then you can get into producing. It's just going to take time for you to understand it. You could also go in more on the executive side. You can become an assistant to a producer, or get in a production company or something, and try to go that route. There's also people that try to go agency and stuff like that. Or there's been people that have been successful business. I mean, one of the guys who produced executive produced the Jesus Revolution, Tony Young. So he and I actually know Tony. He had like his own business, and he was very successful. But he wanted to get in. He's a devout Christian. He wanted to get into kind of the faith and family business. So he started getting involved in financing productions, and he was learning more and stuff like that. But then he built his own studio. He's turned with the Irwin brothers. So he came at it from a different perspective, because he was already like very successful, very, very successful business person. So he was able to, learn kind of on the higher end, and get involved somehow. But I think it's just important to get involved in projects. I think too, some people might not like this advice, but I think if at some point, if you live in somewhere in the Midwest or something, you're going to have to try to go to one of these hubs, like LA or Atlanta or something, where things are happening, just so you can understand it. It's just because even when I came in, you don't really understand it. You don't understand the lingo. It doesn't take that long when you're on set to kind of get to understand it all.
And you
But
figure out what you're good at too on set.
yeah, and you
I feel like being in it,
have to be able to get linked up and start building your network, because that's where you get more work and things like that. You start talking to like-minded people that might be in the same position that want to go up, and that just my advantage when I went to grad school, and I'm not saying that's the route for everybody. It was more the route for me, just because I was coming from an outside. But what the big advantage of going to film school was was in LA, but also it built my network totally. And so because the writer of my last movie I went to school with, and the director I went to school with. So and it just helps with those relationships.
Absolutely. So 2 more questions. Let's get to the final ones really quick.
No problem.
What projects are out there that you would have loved to work on? Like you mentioned the Jesus Revolution. Is there anything out there now that you're saying like, oh man, I would have loved to work on that?
Roger, you know who Roger, I think it's Roger or Robert Eggers. Let me see. Let me just get the right name. Roger Eggers.
Is that a producer, director?
He's a director.
Okay, director. Okay.
I keep messing up if it's Robert.
Yeah.
There's certain directors, for me, this is kind of, I don't want to sound arrogant saying this, but it's like there's a lot of movies that come out that I'm not like really impressed with. Like even the Marvel stuff, I'm not really impressed with. Just because I feel like, well, it's something, but I also feel like cinematically, it's not really there for me. A lot of people love it, and I get it. Look, that's what you need to produce, and these studios at Walt Disney, they want to make a ton of money, so I totally get it. But I love it when I can see a director who really stands out. And, you know, because like back when I would watch movies in the 70s and 80s, I could watch a movie for like 5-10 minutes. I could tell you who the director was because they had a unique style, like Brian De Palma, Spielberg,
Yep.
Scorsese,
Ridley.
Kubrick. You know, like they had these distinct styles.
Mm-hmm.
Robert Eggers, he did The Lighthouse. I don't know if you saw that, and he did The Northman,
Yes.
the Viking. And I was just like, this guy is taking. He's like creatively just killing it, and he's not afraid, which I loved about it, because I was like, he is just gonna he is like, the Viking thing was badass, the Northman, but it was hardcore.
So Robert Eggers, if you're listening to this, watching it, whatever.
Well, he's got his own
contact
stuff.
Doug
He does not need me at all.
He doesn't need you, but at the end of the day, you never know. Phenomenal
But he was a
producers.
guy like he's doing a Nosferatu. He's doing the vampire.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be
But it's
good.
just like he's just doing some great stuff, and he's fearless, which is what I really, I wish more movies would get made like that, because they're fearless. Also, the guys who did the won the Oscar, those guys.
Which one was that?
The Everything Here All at Once, or whatever.
Okay, Everything Everywhere
All at Once.
at
I mean,
once.
those guys started a low budget movie. I actually have friends that worked on that movie, which was the movie with Paul Dano and Danny Radcliffe, which Paul Dano is. It's like A Weekend at Bernie's on acid, because Daniel Radcliffe is dead. He's a dead body, and he's like talking to him and stuff like that. But they had even then, for that budget of that movie, which was like $5 million, had such a creative flair that it stood out. And then they did this movie that won the Oscar because it was just completely and totally unique. And I like filmmakers with vision, and it's good to see, because so many times there's new movies and stuff that just don't really have the vision. Like, they just don't have a unique vision where they're taking chances. And I love that about when film. I mean, Sam Raimi started that way when he was doing. He still has his distinct style.
Exactly. Well, guys, listen, Doug Shaffer has a very unique, out of the box style. He loves people like that are creative. So if you are listening to this, Doug Shaffer is willing to team up with you. If you're thinking outside of the box, if you're not just, popping, playing movies, definitely contact him. But one more thing for you, Doug, before we go. When was that pivotal moment that you knew you had made it in this industry, from aspiring producer to a professional producer?
I think, honestly, it was with this last movie, and it's not that what I was doing was different, but it was doing it completely on my own. Which, because before I'd done a lot of movies, but I worked for a production company. I was the lead producer, and I was doing all the same thing, but to make all the final decisions and stuff truly was where I felt like, okay, like this is, because I always had, the other job I had, I had a report to, where I didn't have to deal with that here, doing it all on my own. So I would say it was this last one, and it was, very uplifting feeling,
And we love that for you, man. I am very proud of you, Doug, and I want to thank you so much.
You've just tuned into an episode of Conversations with Filmmakers podcast. We'd like to thank our guests for joining us and sharing their knowledge. This has been a production of Vonti Pictures, hosted by me, Vonti McCrae, a screenwriter and producer. We'd also like to thank Bad Rabbit Pictures for the animated content and creator of upcoming podcast Age of Prophecy, along with our sponsor, redhawk.uk, with all episodes being edited by Jacob Daly, director, producer, and a man of many talents. Come back next week as this saga continues for the Conversations with Filmmakers podcast.